Introduction of January disease in the country. How has been the progress so far in terms of reducing the January disease?
So government, after realizing that we need to contain general disease and other tick-borne-related diseases, we rolled out quite a number of programs and programmings, and some of them are stopgap measures, and some of them are sustainable long-term measures. But on the stopgap measures, we have the Blitz Tigris programming, or the Blitz Tigris program, and we were targeting over 1 million households, and we distributed 1 kilo on each household of Tigris. And obviously the Tigris works. We believe that it works, and it can protect a mombe for about 2 weeks to 3 weeks. If you smear on the usual tick feeding sites, that is between the legs, on the tail brush, and in the ears, and so forth. So we believe that that interim and stopgap measure worked in our favor in terms of reducing the numbers, in terms of the cases and deaths, general disease cases and deaths. So it reduced the same by over 47%. But of course, we believe that the most sustainable way to contain general disease is obviously to dip, and we need to dip religiously so for the next 1.5 to 2 years. But to do that, we need some certain basic infrastructure, especially in the form of dip tanks. So currently we have over 4,000 dip tanks. Some of them are functional, some of them are not functional. So we now have about 2,900 dip tanks which are now functional, and we intend to put the balance of 1,000 dip tanks to functional by year 2023. So we need to do that because we believe that that's the ultimate. In fact, that's the most sustainable way of containing general disease and other tick-borne-related diseases. But of course, we also have other supporting programmings in terms of the import substitution thrust, especially for dipping chemicals. So what we did as central government is we made a decision to only import the active ingredient. So once we have the active ingredient, we make it being blended and processed by our local players here. So instead of importing the whole dipping chemical, we are only importing the active ingredient and for processing by our local players. So creating jobs and so on and so on. But ultimately, and most importantly, reducing the cost of dipping chemical by over 52%. So this was approved by central government about a year ago, and we are rolling out this. And so far, we are almost done with the procurement processes, the international procurement processes for the active ingredient for dipping chemicals, that is the acaricides, and so that we start the toll manufacturing and toll processing process locally and by supporting our local players.
Okay, you've spoken about achieving a 6 million head by 2023. How is this going to be achieved?
Yeah, so it's going to be achieved if and only if we religiously implement the dictates and the critical touch points in the Livestock Recovery and Growth Plan. We basically have 4 pillars in the Livestock Recovery and Growth Plan, and we are basically looking at improved national genetics. We need to improve the genetics of our national herd, and there's a lot of inbreeding happening there. And of course, if you have inbreeding, the beast size will reduce in size. So we have to work on that. And the function today is obviously that touch point in motion in terms of improving our national genetics, our national heads genetics, and we are doing that. So we have quite a number of programs and programmings around that. We have the Presidential Youth Heifer Scheme. We also have the Presidential Bull Scheme, and among other private sector-led schemes, which are intended at improving the national heads genetics, because it's very, very important. That's where you can get all those other indicators, including the average carcass weight. It also comes from good breeds and good genetics and so on and so on. Then the other point is obviously averting poverty deaths by addressing issues to do with nutrition, animal nutrition, and so forth. So we have quite a number of programs around that in terms of addressing the issues around poverty deaths. We lost quite a bit, and indeed a significant proportion of our national herd due to poverty deaths. So we have quite a number of interventions as government, and some of them are actually private sector led. So number one, we have the presidential forage program, where we distribute, especially to the vulnerable households, we distribute a standard input package comprising of climate smart pasture options and climate smart feed options, so that we promote what we call on-farm feed formulations and hence and ultimately averting poverty deaths and deaths due to lack of feed and lack of pastures. So we know that climate change is indeed a real reality, and the livestock subspace will also need to adapt, and lest it will die and it will not grow. So we have yes, those interventions. Then on the dairy subspace, we have the dairy silage program under the commercial contract farming programming, as well as under the presidential silage program, where under the presidential silage program we are distributing a standard input package to do a 1 hectare of silage for maize and also for traditional grains, your forage sorghum, your red sorghum, and so forth and so forth. We are distributing those inputs to our farmers. And last year we targeted over 2,000 smallholder dairy farmers, and it was more like a lifeline support for them, and it worked incredibly well. And hence our numbers in terms of the dairy production went up by over 4%, which was quite incredible, from about 76 million to about 80 million litres. Of course, we are still shy from meeting our national annual requirement of about 120, 140 million litres, but we are almost getting there. But these little small steps will get us there certainly. So in the regards of obviously averting poverty deaths, that's what we are currently doing as government. Then the animal health issues, I have mentioned the animal health issues interventions, the interventions which we are rolling out as government. Number one, containing general disease and that other tick-borne-related diseases, the vaccinations for FMD and so on, targeting the hotspots, and also the Bonare fencing project, trying to separate the buffaloes and to minimize interaction between buffaloes and our herd, and so forth and so forth. Those are all the interventions and efforts to try and manage and green tick that critical touch point of animal health issues, so that we reduce deaths due to diseases and ultimately start to see our national herd growing. And obviously by year 2023 we are targeting 6 million national herd from the current 5.5 million, and of course by year 2025 we are targeting 7.5 to about 8 million national herd. But we need to definitely green tick all those issues to do with those critical touch points. But lastly is to do with climate change adaptation, obviously. So yeah, we have quite a number of interventions, and the other one is obviously distribution of pasture, climate smart pasture options, the adoption of small stock, goats, sheep and so on, those that are climate smart in the livestock subspace, so that ultimately we see the livestock sub-economy adapting to the vagaries and the realities of climate change effects and variabilities. Then the other issue is obviously improved marketing systems. That's very, very critical. We have an indicator which we always track as ministry and indeed as government, and it is called the cattle offtake rate. So currently we are sitting on 9%. That's cattle which goes through the formal markets. Currently we are sitting on 9%, which is low. So we need to increase that and to improve that, maybe to about 15% by year 2025. So we have quite a number of interventions around that. So we are remodeling our cattle sale and auction systems in Zimbabwe. Then we are also introducing the mobile auction platforms, whereby we have a mobile crawl going to the wards and the villages, and then obviously some kind of interim and temporal handling facilities are made instantly, and obviously auctions are done, so that at least our smallholder farmers especially, they start to realize real value from their livestock. So we are working on the same, so that we improve our cattle and marketing systems.
In terms of meat export, how many tons are we exporting a year of meat?
Yeah, so in terms of exports, obviously that number obviously has been going down, and but at the same time it's starting to pick up, especially through the private sector initiatives. And we need to be targeting obviously the Middle East. We also need to be targeting the regional markets, DRC, Angola, and so on, and other markets, and also the European markets again. But of course, part of the efforts is obviously to make sure that we contain FMD, because according to the minimum export standards, there's no compromise on FMD. So that's the reason why government is investing in a lot of efforts and investing a lot of resources towards containing FMD, that is your foot and mouth disease, so that we start to export beef again and on a massive scale. But the other point is we are now trying to bring back CSC. I understand you are aware that we have been having some challenges in terms of implementing the dictates and indeed the objectives of the concession agreement either between Boston Beef and the government of Zimbabwe. But we are now almost now on track, because we are now talking with Boston Beef, and Bulawayo is up. The Bulawayo abattoir is now up, and we are also targeting other abattoirs, obviously with export standards, so that we ramp up beef exports and beef production.